Have you ever felt like you're living with a saboteur? And I don't mean a difficult boss or a toxic friend or even a rival at work. I mean someone living, rent-free inside your own head. You know the feeling. You set a goal, you want to be a good partner or a focused employee, you're just a generally calm person.
Right.
But then this impulse kicks in, and suddenly you're your own worst enemy. You're doing the exact opposite of what you know you should do.
It's the battle line drawn right down the center of the human heart. I mean, we spend so much energy fortifying ourselves against external threats, locking our doors, checking our credit scores.
All of that, yeah.
But the source material we're looking at today argues that the most volatile war, and the one that causes the most damage, is the civil war happening silently inside of us.
And that is exactly what we're unpacking in today's deep dive. We are looking at a very reflective, almost philosophical talk by Pastor Hu Zikang from November 21st. And that title, it's so evocative and, I mean, honestly, a little confronting, right? The war with yourself.
It is. And before we get into the heavy concepts, and there are some heavy ones today, I think it's really important to set the scene.
Okay.
The source material isn't just a list of, well, it's more than just a list of rules. It's grounded in a very specific moment in time and space.
Right. It explicitly mentions the context in Taiwan. The temperature is plummeting, actually. It says that cold rain is falling. It's that kind of weather where you just want to bundle up and stay inside.
Totally. And looming over everything is the approach of the Lunar New Year.
Ah, okay.
Which creates a very specific psychological pressure, doesn't it? The end of the year is when the bills come due, both financially and emotionally.
So sure.
You're cold, you're introspective, the year is closing out, and you're looking back asking, did I get what I wanted? Did I achieve my goals? It's the perfect backdrop for this discussion about desire, frustration, and what happens when things don't go our way.
It's that mix of cozy and stressful. So our mission today is to take that introspective vibe and apply it to the text the source analyzes. James chapter 4, verses 1 through 6. We're going to look at the connection between our internal wants, what the source calls wrong prayers, and how those invisible feelings cause very visible explosions in our relationships and workplaces.
Basically, how an internal war becomes an external war.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's start with the core text. The source quotes this famous passage. You do not have a woman because you do not ask. You ask and do not receive because you ask wrongly.
Right.
Now, I have to stop you there. Ask wrongly. That phrasing trips me up every time. It sounds like a bureaucratic error. Like, did I fill out the wrong form?
Did I use the wrong stamp?
Yeah. Is there a specific magical syntax I missed?
It does sound technical, doesn't it? Like you failed a driving test or something. But the source digs into the original meaning here, and it's definitely not about syntax or ritual. The definition it gives for wrongly is asking to waste it on your pleasures.
Waste it on your pleasures. That feels aggressive.
It does.
It implies that seeking happiness or pleasure is inherently wasteful. Is the source saying we shouldn't enjoy things, that we should all just be miserable?
No, not exactly. And this is where we need to be really nuanced. The source isn't arguing against joy, it's arguing against hedonism as a primary operating system.
Yeah, okay.
The critique here is that the motive for the request is a closed loop. It starts with, I want, and it ends with my satisfaction. There's no higher purpose, no outward flow. It is consumption for the sake of consumption.
So it's about the center of gravity. Is the prayer or the desire orbiting me? Or am I orbiting something else?
Precisely. And the source makes a very bold claim here. It says these self-centered desires are dangerous because they corrupt the very tool meant to help us. Prayer. Usually, we think of prayer as an inherently good act. If I'm praying, I'm being spiritual. I'm doing the right thing.
Right. It's the halo effect. If I'm on my knees or if I'm engaging in some spiritual practice, I must be humble.
But the source flips that completely. It suggests you can pray in a way that is actually an act of rebellion. There's a quote here that really stopped me in my tracks. The purpose of prayer is not to call your will to be done in heaven, but to call God's will to be done on earth.
That is a massive shift in perspective. I think most people, even if they aren't super religious, view prayer or manifesting or just, wishful thinking as sending a shopping list to the universe.
Totally. Dear universe, I would like the promotion, the new car, and for my neighbor to stop playing drums at midnight. Thanks.
Exactly.
And that is what the source identifies as a religious cover-up. I think this was one of the most insightful takeaways for me. It describes a structural flaw where people use spiritual language to disguise carnal ambition.
So you sound holy,
You might use holy words, you might sound very pious, but deep down you aren't surrendering to a higher power, you're trying to command it.
It's a Trojan horse. It looks like a gift of devotion on the outside, but inside, it's just a demand for control. You're trying to use the divine as a vending machine.
Exactly. You are trying to instrumentalize the divine to serve your ego. And that's what the source calls wasting it on your pleasures. And the danger isn't just that the prayer isn't answered. The danger is what happens to you when you operate that way. It corrodes the foundation.
Well, let's talk about that, what happens.
Yeah.
Because the source draws a straight line from this internal posture to external chaos. This isn't just abstract theology. It's about why we fight with our spouses.
Right.
How do we get from a wrong prayer to a screaming match in the kitchen?
It's a chain reaction. The source lays out the psychology of this beautifully, and it's almost like a slow-motion car crash. Step 1. We desire with the wrong motive, pure selfishness.
Right.
We want the thing because we want to consume it. Step 2. The request is denied. You don't get the promotion. The relationship doesn't work out. The universe says no.
Okay, so now I'm disappointed. That's a normal human emotion.
Right.
We all get disappointed.
True. But for the person in this closed loop of selfishness, it doesn't stay at disappointment. It curdles into anger. Step 3 is becoming angry at the source of the denial god, fate, the universe, the boss. But here is the catch, and this is the psychological twist. It is very frightening to be angry at God.
Yeah, you can't exactly pick a fight with the Almighty without feeling a little crazy or terrified.
Yeah.
It feels like punching a wall that's infinitely harder than your hand.
Right. It feels dangerous.
Yeah.
So we engage in what psychologists call displacement. That anger has to go somewhere. It's like high-pressure steam in a pipe. If it can't vent up towards the source, it vents out. The source calls this the blast zone.
Oh, wow.
We take that frustration, that burning question of why didn't I get what I wanted, and we launch at the nearest safe target.
Which is usually the people we claim to love, the people who are just there.
Exactly. The source explicitly mentions division in churches, fights among members, and conflict within families.
That is tragic, but also really illuminating. It suggests that when we see a massive explosion over something trivial like whose turn it is to wash the dishes or the color of the carpet.
It's never about the dishes.
It's never actually about the dishes or the carpet.
No, those are just the trigger points. The fuel for the explosion is that displaced anger from an unanswered selfish desire. The person is screaming at their spouse, but they are really screaming at the reality that didn't give them what they felt they were owed. They're fighting an external war because they're losing an internal one.
It totally changes how you look at conflict. If someone is blowing up at me, instead of fighting back and escalating, maybe I need to wonder, what internal war are they losing right now?
And more importantly, what internal war am I losing? The source's remedy here isn't to go fix the other person. It isn't to win the argument. It's self-examination. We have to stop looking at the external enemies, the annoying neighbor, the spouse, the system, and ask, where's the war happening inside me? If I solve the internal war, the need to fire missiles at everyone else just disappears.
So the path to peace with others starts with a peace treaty with yourself, or rather a surrender of that selfish demand.
Correct. It's disarming the bomb before it goes off.
Now this leads us to the section of the source that I found the most narratively compelling. To explain why we don't get what we want, why the universe says no, the source uses this analogy attributed to Pastor Tang Rong. It's about a father and 3 children.
This is a classic analogy for a reason. It simplifies a complex theological concept, divine wisdom, into something very tangible.
Yeah.
It takes the abstract idea of unanswered prayer and puts it at the dinner table.
So let's retell it, because the details really matter here. The setup is simple. A father has 3 kids, an older brother, a sister, and a younger brother. All 3 come to the dad with the exact same request. They say, "Dad, I want a razor."
A unified demand. We all want the same tool. But the father's response is different for each one, and that difference is the key to understanding how unanswered prayer works.
Let's start with child 1, the older brother. He asks for the razor, and the father gives it to him.
Right. Why? Because he's growing a beard. The source says it is necessary. The request aligns with the reality of his biological situation.
A functional need. The right tool for the right job.
Exactly.
Okay, that's the easy one. Request matches need. Result is yes. Then comes child 2, the sister. She asks, "Dad, I want a razor too," and the father says no.
Now, this is where it gets sensitive, but we have to follow the source's logic to get the point. The father says, "You are a girl. You don't need to shave a beard." The refusal here isn't because the father loves her less than the brother. It's not favoritism.
It's about who she is.
It's based on identity and nature.
It's a hard no based on who she is. So the source is saying that sometimes we ask for things that fundamentally don't fit our design or our path. We see someone else get a razor, maybe a friend gets a specific career opportunity or lifestyle, and we say, I want that. It looks cool. They look happy.
And the answer is no, because getting it wouldn't make sense for who we are.
Exactly.
It would be a mismatch. It's like asking for a map to a city you don't live in. It's not useful for your journey.
Right.
Okay.
But then we have child 3, the younger brother, the toddler. He sees the older brother with the razor, he sees the shiny blade, and he says, me too, me too.
And the father says, not yet.
Not yet. He says, wait 2 or 3 years until you grow up. This introduces the element of timing. The desire isn't wrong. He will eventually need to shave. The object isn't wrong. Razors are useful tools, but the time is wrong.
And this is the crucial part that I think we often miss in our own lives. If the father gave the razor to the toddler right then and there, it wouldn't be a gift. It would be a weapon.
The child sees a toy. The father sees the blood. The source is making a profound point here about the gap between our limited perspective and divine wisdom. We often interpret a no or a not yet as rejection. We think God is holding out on me, or the universe is punishing me. We feel like the victim.
We feel deprived. We look at the older brother and think it's not fair. But the story reframes that deprivation as protection. The father isn't withholding the razor because he's stingy. He's withholding it because he possesses a knowledge of the future and of safety that the child lacks.
That is a tough pill to swallow when you're the toddler. You don't know you're a toddler. You think you're ready. You think you can handle the blade.
And that's the humility the source calls for. When we are fighting that war with ourselves because we didn't get what we wanted, maybe we need to pause and ask a really hard question. Am I the toddler asking for a razor? Is this rejection actually a form of protection I'm too immature to understand?
It requires trusting that there is a perspective higher than your own immediate desire, which is very hard when you really, really want the thing.
It is. But the alternative is getting the razor and cutting yourself. The source implies that many of the things we grieve over not getting, the relationship that ended, the job we lost, would have destroyed us if we had received them.
Speaking of things that can destroy us if we get too much of them, the source pivots from razors to something much more relatable, the all-you-can-eat buffet.
Yes, the buffet. The source uses this to explain the danger of unchecked accumulation.
I think everyone knows this feeling. You go to a buffet, you pay your entry fee, and suddenly it's not about hunger anymore. It's about economics.
Yes.
I need to eat enough crab legs to justify the $40.
It's the get your money's worth mentality. The source describes eating until you are absolutely stuffed just to satisfy that mental ledger. You are consuming past the point of pleasure just because you can. And then what happens?
Oh, a day or two later, you're physically sick.
You're sick. It's a self-inflicted wound.
You won the battle against the buffet, but you lost the war for your health.
It is the law of diminishing returns applied to gluttony. And the source uses this to explain spiritual and material desires. Just because you can consume more, or just because you want more, doesn't mean it's healthy. The text calls for a temperate heart.
A temperate heart. That's a beautiful phrase. It sounds so calm compared to the frantic energy of a buffet line, where everyone is rushing for the fresh tray of shrimp.
It is. It's the opposite of that grasping, anxious energy. It's realizing that stuffing yourself, whether with food or possessions or status, leads to a spiritual sickness that is just as real as the physical nausea from overeating.
And the source takes this concept of grasping and drops it right into the middle of the modern workplace. This part felt very real to me, especially with that Lunar New Year context. It talks about the end of the year, performance reviews, KPIs, and bonuses.
This is the practical application. We talked about the theology of prayer, the psychology of displacement, the analogy of the razor. Now, here is the reality of your bank account.
Yep.
The source mentions that as the year ends, companies are doing their assessments, and this is a prime breeding ground for that war within.
Oh, absolutely. It's the time of year when your worth is literally quantified on a spreadsheet. And the source describes two very different reactions to getting your score or your bonus.
The first is gratitude. Simply being thankful for what you received. I have a job, I got a bonus, this is good.
That sounds nice. But let's be honest, that's not where most people live. That's the ideal.
No, most people fall into the second category, which the source identifies as the trap of comparison. Why did that person get a higher score?
I worked harder than him.
This is unfair.
It's a relative deprivation. You could get a $5,000 bonus and be thrilled, but the moment you find out the guy in the next cubicle got $5,500, your $5,000 feels like an insult. You were happy 10 seconds ago, and now you're miserable.
And that misery is the war with yourself. The source points out that this internal narrative destroys your peace. You are letting your happiness be held hostage by someone else's outcome. You're fighting a battle you cannot win because there is always someone with a little bit more.
So what is the remedy? Because it's hard to just turn off that feeling of unfairness. We are wired to look for justice.
The source offers some very professional, almost stoic advice here. It says, work faithfully in your profession. Focus on your own center. Leave the assessment to the officers and colleagues.
Stay in your lane, essentially. Do your work well for the sake of the work.
But with a spiritual anchor, the advice is to not harbor unfairness in your heart. The source says, justice belongs to God.
That's a heavy concept for the workplace.
It is, but think about the freedom it offers. If you truly believe that true validation comes from a higher source, or even just from your own internal integrity, then the quarterly review loses its power to hurt you. If you anchor your self-worth entirely on that external score, you are setting yourself up for that internal war every single year. You are handing the keys to your happiness to your boss.
So the professional advice is actually spiritual advice in disguise. Do your work, be faithful to your craft, and let go of the result. Stop trying to control the outcome.
Which brings us full circle back to the beginning. Trying to control the outcome, whether in prayer, with the racer, or in a performance review, is usually an expression of that self-centered desire.
Right.
It's saying, my will be done. Letting go and trusting the timing, like the razor story is saying, thy will be done.
It's amazing how these things connect. From a cold, rainy day in Taiwan to a scripture written thousands of years ago to a year-end performance review, the thread running through it all is this battle between what we selfishly want and what is actually good for us.
And the source reminds us that winning this war doesn't mean conquering the people around us. It doesn't mean winning the argument or getting the biggest bonus. It means conquering that greedy, grasping voice inside us.
It means silencing the saboteur we talked about at the start.
That's it.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, let's recap the journey we've been on. It's been quite a ride.
We started with the paradox of prayer, that asking wrongly means asking just to satisfy our own pleasures, creating a closed loop of selfishness.
Right. And then we saw how that internal frustration turns into displaced anger, turning our families and churches into blast zones.
Then we looked at the wisdom of the razor analogy and how rejection can actually be protection from a danger we can't see yet.
And finally, we applied it to the buffet line and the office cubicle, avoiding the sickness of excess and the trap of comparison.
It really challenges you to look at your own frustrations differently. It moves the problem from out there to in here.
It does. And I think the source leaves us with some powerful questions for self-reflection. I want to leave the listener with these because I think they are worth sitting with for a minute.
Okay.
The source asks us to look back and identify. Can you find a time when your own desires led to a wrong action?
Or have you ever prayed or just hoped really hard with an improper motive only to realize it later? That's a tough one to admit.
It is.
It requires brutal honesty to say, I wanted that for the wrong reasons.
It does. But the most provocative thought for me is this. Instead of asking, why didn't I get what I wanted? The source encourages us to ask, what internal war am I fighting right now that is blocking my peace?
That's the money question. If you are feeling conflict in your life, don't look out the window. Look in the mirror.
Well, listener, as the source reminds us, the weather is getting colder, so stay warm out there. Whether you are bundling up against the rain or preparing for your own performance reviews of life, we hope you can navigate them with a little more peace and a little less internal warfare.
Indeed. Stay curious and stay reflective.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.